Good to have you back, sleepyheads. You've tuned in at exactly the right moment. Before Silas leaves his first footprint, a word from the voice behind the clock. You know, the one who sets these journeys in motion and lets them linger. Tonight, we're walking the moon just after humanity arrives and just before the universe forgets we were ever there. This is history at its most intimate and silence. There's no crowds, there's no borders. There's no applause left hanging in the vacuum, just dust that hasn't been disturbed in a billion years, shadows that don't move, and the soft realization of a species suddenly aware of how small it truly is. It's the perfect place for a quiet walk. Nothing up here competes for your attention except perspective. If you enjoy drifting through history where wonder meets insignificance, settle in. Find your place among the sleepy circle. Let's begin.
Chapter 1 The Ghost of Triumph. Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your slightly sleep-deprived tour guide through time and ill-advised geography. If you enjoy my soft voice narrating humanity's bravest bad ideas, tap like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. I won't stalk you, unless you're broadcasting from Mare Tranquilitatis, in which case, bring snacks. There's no atmosphere and my picnic keeps floating off my mood. Now, slow your breath. Feel the weight leave your shoulders. We're going somewhere with less weight in general. The year is 1969 plus. The applause has faded to a rumor, and the dust still remembers boots. The moon is quiet. And by quiet, I mean the kind of silence that could pass a background check. I step down onto powder older than language and feel it accept me with an indifference that borders on philosophical. The regolith compresses like talc under a ballet slipper. My boot leaves a crisp impression that will outlive my petty grievances by a few million years. The sky is black velvet stitched with needles of starlight. No clouds, no blue, no birds, no mercy. On earth, wind writes love notes on your cheeks. Here, nothing touches you unless you touch it first. The first sound is inside my skull, the padded thump of my heartbeat, the soft whisper of suit fans, the occasional ping of thermal contraction somewhere in the frame that suggests my life support has a sense of humor. Over everything, a hush so complete it feels like an ancient librarian raised a finger and the universe obeyed. Ahead lies Tranquility Base, the still heart of history. The words live here even when no one is around to say them. The eagle has landed. There is a geometry to human pride. 4 spindly legs splayed on a dusted plain, a ladder, a plaque with sentiment engraved in perpetuity. The descent stage sits like a golden insect resting between leaps, mylar glinting, struts braced, ladder rungs inviting and unnecessary. Scattered footprints radiate from it like applause marks in chalk. I take a slow step, then another, and discover the joy of low gravity all over again, the small, lunar spring in each movement, as if the moon and I are in a careful negotiation. She allows me to rise a little higher than reason. I promise not to get cocky. Dust lofts and falls lazily, trailing me like a silvery rumor. My shadow is a stark cutout pasted to the ground. I look like a cardboard silhouette someone forgot after the parade. There's the flag, stiffened by a horizontal rod planted with theater's precision. It should be perfectly still, the straight-laced patriot in a vacuum. But as I approach, I see fabric tremble, just a shiver, a slow ripple, a heartbeat in cloth where no breeze exists. The motion is so deliberate, so languid, it feels less like physics and more like memory stretching its limbs after a long nap. I stop a few arm lengths away, careful not to stir dust onto it. I'm no monster, and watch. The flag twists a degree or two, then relaxes back, a sigh you could measure with calipers. Even patriotism gets lonely up here, I murmur, goes looking for company. The joke lands soft and strange in my helmet, and for a moment I imagine the stars pretending not to smirk. There's a loneliness on this plane that tastes metallic at the back of the tongue. The landing site is a museum exhibit without ropes, discarded tools lying precisely where human hands let them go. The retro-reflector's polished eye, a seismometer squatting like a patient beetle, a tangle of foil like the moon tried on gift wrap and decided it clashed with the dust. A scoop sits half buried, its handle catching light with the miserable optimism of a rake in late autumn. I walk a wide arc around the descent stage, admiring it the way you admire an elder's cane, useful, battered, dignified by the story it already told. Up close, the mylar has the look of a confidence, game, wrinkled gold that somehow did a giant thing. The latter is schoolyard simple. I touch a rung with a gloved finger, and a dainty frost of dust lifts and settles again, too slowly, the moon's choreography practiced and precise. There's the plaque, bright and earnest, a promise that we came in peace for all mankind. Peace arrived in a tin can balanced on propellant and prayer. As mission statements go, I've seen worse, and then watched history edit them in red pen. I circle to the shadowed side and peer beneath the belly where engine bells are quiet and the contact probes clutch the ground like blind fingers. The foot pads sit stamped into the dust, tidy craters of intention. My visor reflects the gold and gray, a visiting ghost layered over a relic. For a ridiculous breath, I consider taking a selfie. Then I remember there is no one to judge me but the vacuum, and she already hates drama. Silence expands when you pay attention to it. In that silence, a sound blooms, not from the world around me, but from the wire curling inside my helmet like a tame snake. A brittle crackle, a faded hiss, the archaic texture of distant speech. I go still, every muscle a held breath. Then, soft as superstition, Eagle to Houston. The words arrive thin, like they were printed on rice paper 50 years ago and smuggled to me between the pages of an old book. Copy, I whisper, because talking to ghosts is a victimless crime. Eagle, this is nobody important. You already did the important part. The voice loops, Eagle to Houston, and warps, dipping half a tone, then rising too cleanly. A recording caught in the webbing of time. My skin prickles beneath the suit, a sensation both impossible and extremely present. Either ghosts have good reception, I say, trying on humor like a fresh helmet seal, or nostalgia does. The loop scrapes once more, then laughter, just one breath, a human exhale shaped like joy, and the line dies to a polite hush. The silence that follows is profound in a way that has nothing to do with vacuum. I stand very still, boots making tiny horizons in the dust, and feel history lean close enough to fog my visor from the inside. This is the still heart of history, and hearts are not meant to remain still forever. They beat. They pump meaning into muscle, pushing tension into limbs. Yet everything here is paused, suspended between pulse and echo. The moon is a perfect archivist. She keeps what you hand her, and she will not read it back unless you beg. I let my breath slow until it matches the soft cycle of my suit's life support. I count 5 beats, then 10. I picture the checklists, the clipped voices, the ordinary talk that escorted the extraordinary deed. Houston, Tranquility Base here. A sentence like a simple doorway into myth. On Earth, someone spilled coffee hearing it. Someone else didn't hear it all and learned only later, at dinner or in a newspaper or from a neighbor knocking with the wrong mix of awe and jealousy. The world choreographed itself around that line like iron filings around a magnet, and the moon said nothing. She still says nothing. It is her best quality. I begin to move again, a gentle hop that would look absurd anywhere but here. Each step stamps a certainty into the powder, crisp edges so sharp they look drawn. My shadow walks beside me, a harmless twin. I angle toward a cluster of scattered tools, lunar litter, sacred junk. The laser reflector catches a sunbeam and throws it back like a wink. The seismograph stands with monkish patience, waiting for a tremor from a world that prefers dramatic pauses to dramatic quakes. It is, in a way, the perfect American installation, a thing designed to listen forever. The ground here is a pale carpet brushed by the souls of two men and centuries of light. I kneel, test the dust with my glove, lift some and let it fall. It cascades, delicate, a gray waterfall that makes no sound and still convinces the ear it must be whispering. The grains cling to my suit like 1,000 stubborn memories. Somewhere, future curators groan. Past the tools, the flag stands in profile, fabric fixed in a command to stay interesting. But again, there it is, the slow twist, the reluctant turn, as if some subtle thermal exhale from the surface caught a seam and pulled it one side to the left. Show off, I say fondly, and for a second my voice makes me sound like a man admiring a goldfish that learned to play dead on cue. I back away from the flag, unwilling to trade its theatrical dignity for the clumsy accident of my shadow crossing it wrong. Instead, I drift closer to the descent stage and try to imagine the sound it made when it arrived. The rush of descent, the cough of dust billowing, the engine throttling to a whisper, the probes tickling regolith and telling the machine enough. Up here, the only soundtrack is my breath. The orchestra is gone. The applause has been filed. The crowd went home to plan it. The stage is set. The actors vanished, and I'm the usher who never left. I put my palm, gloved and clumsy, on the metal. It does not care. It is as warm as the sun makes it, as cold as shadow decides. I consider the ladder rungs, the big first step, the small, complicated sentence. The cliché would be to say, I feel small. I don't. I feel correctly sized for my species, brash enough to come, soft-hearted enough to mark the moment with poetry, messy enough to leave behind trash and tools and promises. Inside my helmet, a drop of sweat migrates in low gravity and clings to my eyebrow with embarrassing determination. I blink it away and watch it float, a perfect sphere that might be my least dignified artifact on this entire plane. In an hour or a decade, some officious future exobiologist will recover it and name a microbe after me. I hope it's a handsome microbe. The comms hiss once more, teasing at a word, tranquil, then swallow. Themselves. I exhale, long and deliberate, until my lungs feel as empty as the horizon. The electrocardiogram inside my skull steadies. Awe is exhausting when you do it correctly. Reverence has a resting heart rate. Okay, I say, not to anyone or maybe to the dust. We'll keep walking. I turn my back to the module and face the low roll of the Sea of Tranquility, flat and glittering like someone spilled a galaxy and forgot to mop. Earth never looked flatter than the maps we drew. The moon never looked more oceanic than this landlocked sea. Somewhere off to my right, just out of sight, is Little West Crater, a dark pupil dilating in glare. We'll go there, later. For now, I mark the way the light cuts edges sharp as razors, how shadows fall in slabs, how distance plays tricks in a place with no air to blur it. I take 3 slow leaps, and the dust ghosts up and settles, leaving my footprint sincere and undisturbed. There is a thrill to vandalizing eternity with something so simple as a boot tread. On Earth, weather forgives you. Here, you are archived. You meet the permanent record, and it smiles with all its teeth. What do you do after the first? I ask aloud. After the giant leap. In the helmet, my voice sounds like a private radio show hosted by a man who took up philosophy because the bars were closed. You do the second, I suppose, then the third. You keep proving you meant it. Far across the plain, the flag performs its private rehearsal again. 1/2 breath, a turn, a settle. I decide to allow it mystery. I decide to allow myself one, too. Behind me, the descent stage glitters like a reliquary in a church that doesn't care if you believe. The plaque waits patiently for eyes. The retroreflector angles its face toward an Earth that will blink lasers at it for ages, asking simple questions and calling that closeness. The seismograph listens. The dust keeps its diary in fine cursive. Tranquility, I say, testing the word in a place that forces you to mean it. The syllables hang for a heartbeat inside my helmet and then are recycled with the rest of me. I grin, wicked and small. It's not that the moon is peaceful, I add. It's that it has already won the argument. A final glance at the flag, the lonely pageant, the slow twist. Then the comms murmur and go politely dead, the way a theater hushes right before a second act. I turn towards the darker line of the mare's edge and begin a careful hop lilt that would get me mocked at home and feels like grace here. Stay close. Our footprints are already a thesis in bold. Ahead, the sea waits, flat as a held breath. We'll walk its lip and watch the edge of history like tide. If you listen, you can hear it. No sound at all. Louder than applause. History's heartbeat, echoing in vacuum. Chapter 2. The Sea That Never Was. I angle away from the golden insect of the descent stage and drift toward a glinting scatter that looks, from a distance, like a tiny shipwreck dragged ashore by a very polite tide. Up close, it's a hush of tools half sunk in powder, spoons for geology, calipers for curiosity, foil blankets rumpled like shed skins. The moon does not swallow things, it catalogs them. Every dropped wrench is an exhibit with an extremely patient docent. The laser retroreflector sits on its squat tripod all crystal-eyed and attentive, as if it expects Earth to blink at it any second. It will. Earth is clingy like that. Beside it, a seismometer holds its breath in public, monkish and dutiful. I pass a scoop lying at a lazy angle, its handle glittering like a silver fish. The scoop is honest about everything except whether it's finished working. I kneel, weight becoming more suggestion than demand, and brush dust from a discarded sample bag. The fabric, moon-bleached, responds with a soft sigh of grit. The zipper tab twitches under my glove, grumpy after half a century of naps. If Earth had sense, it would give each of these items a tiny plaque. Here lies the utensil that scraped a truth out of nowhere. The moon, of course, has better manners than to boast. Silence presses in, not empty, but available. There's the whisper of my fans, the faint telemetry thrum, the tiny ping of thermal stress in a frame taught to behave. When I still my hands, the quiet becomes a black field in which every thought shows up in high res. Wonder sits right beside dread in that field, sharing a folding chair, elbows never not touching. I tap the scoop's edge, a gentle, ceremonial chime, and stand. Ahead, The plane rolls out like a gray tablecloth ironed by gods with no patience for wrinkles. The edge of Mare Tranquillitatis is less a line than a mood. The ground flattens into an ocean that forgot the recipe for waves. A dark sheet poured into a bowl and left to set. The rim of a shallow rill etches a crease, a dry river that never had the decency to be wet. I take a step, and the dust answers in slow motion. Another step, and a sharp, insectile tick in my right ear. A bright needle of cold kisses my cheekbone. Then a hairline crack slivers across the corner of my visor like a spider deciding my face needs interior design. The line is no longer than a thumbnail, but it carries the kind of authority only physics respects. I freeze so hard you could use me as a sundial and still write the time in trembling. There's a hiss, not loud, not dramatic, more like a stubborn teapot, the pressure differential's first opinion. My breath stutters. My brain flips through 6 languages looking for the word nope. Train and elbows panic aside with the clipped voice of a teacher who has seen far worse. Seal. Stabilize. Slow. I lift my left hand with unflattering delicacy. The patch kid on my forearm waits, tidy, rule-abiding. And yet I remember a trick old as dirt itself. I crouch, scoop a palm of regolith, and tamp it gently against the crack's outer seam, making a delicate powder poultice exactly no engineer has ever signed off on. The moon's dust is clingy, electrostatic, a cat that will not get off your lap. It cakes along the fracture's edges and goes suddenly dark under my glove light, as if choosing to become a sealant out of civic pride. The hiss drops to a sulky thread, then quits like a kid told to stop tapping the table. I count to 10. Then another 10, because superstition is just physics that hasn't passed peer review. The line in the visor remains, a gray hair in the glass, a memento mori etched by vacuum. Patching eternity with powder, I breathe, flooding with a shaky laugh that fogs the lower rim for a heartbeat. OSHA would love this. No alarm screams, no blood boils, no heroic last monologue. Just my heart booming in my helmet like a drum someone dropped down a stairwell, then gradually remembering it keeps time for other organs too. I let my knees unlock one click at a time. I glance back at the descent, stage, small, steady, gold, and give it a tiny nod the way sailors nod at lighthouses. Okay, we are doing this, carefully, with new humility, and with the dust's blessing clinging to my glove like gray glitter. I resume my slow hop toward the mare's edge, feeling the vice-like calm that follows almost disaster. Colors here are an argument between slate and pearl. The sun carves everything into absolutes, white where it hits, black where it doesn't. No midtones, no moral ambiguity. If Earth invented chiaroscuro for painters, the moon invented it to humble photographers. Shadows fall in slabs thick as oaths. The horizon is nearer than instinct allows, a tight curve that makes you feel like you're walking inside a bowl, and the lip is patiently waiting. Halfway to the rill, I catch a peripheral disturbance and freeze. My footprints, my neat narcissistic string of I was here stamps, have developed opinions. The tidy line forks to the left, then again to the right, creating a small tributary of treads that leads toward me. The spacing is mine, the tread pattern mine, the confidence level uncomfortably familiar. They converge, then stop 3 paces from my boots like polite guests who've just remembered they weren't invited. I stand motionless. My suit whispers. My tongue performs a quick census of all available swear words and files a report recommending silence. Slowly, I pivot my head and trace the new trail backward. It arcs, graceful as a pen stroke, toward a shallow crater maybe 20 meters off. Nothing dramatic, just a dark thumbprint pressed into the mare. The prints march to its lip, peer over with feigned innocence, and end. Cleanly. No descent, no scramble out the far side. Just ending, as if the crater rim were the punctuation and the footprints the sentence. I do not move closer. Some mysteries deserve distance. I have walked through revolutions and pandemics and midnight cities where love punched above its weight. But there are lines. Even a clever fool knows not to cross. The moon is a mirror with teeth. If you stare too hard, it will stare back using your own face. There are, of course, explanations. Thermal flexing in the suit legs could have shifted dust in a way that reads as tread. A micro-meteor shower earlier could have freckled the ground, and then a trick of light carved the freckles into confidence. Or, my favorite, time itself, cut oddly over this plane, allowed my own path to swing out ahead like a dog off leash, and then hurried back, feigning obedience. I am a scientist when convenient, and a poet when terrified. Today, I'm both with excellent posture. I take a careful step away from the crater. The dust accepts me without editorializing. Another step, angling gently back toward the original path. The duplicate prints remain where they are, intention without follow-through, the ghost of a decision I chose not to make. My visor crack throws a faint parallax on the horizon. The world looks doubly true. I breathe fully again, and the fans purr like a cat whose standards I finally met. The edge of tranquility draws near. The Riley's shallow trench appears, shadow pooled in it like ink in a groove. I stand at the brink and look across the sea that never was. Basalt plains stretch to the curve, studded with pebbled glass and stubborn rocks that refuse to melt. The surface gleams where the sun scythes it. In the middle distance, a small boulder stands like a remembered promise. Beyond it, the horizon makes a low, confident smile and declines to tell me what's after. Wind would make this place easier. You could taste direction on your tongue, read weather in your ears. But the moon refuses to carry you. You must carry yourself. I lean into the feeling of balance that is more equation than instinct here, and let wonder start dissolving into that quiet dread only explorers admit to when the microphones are off. Exploration is intrusion disguised as curiosity, and the difference between the two is mostly how gently you put things back. I squat at the lip and pinch a bit more dust, letting it flow through my fingers. It falls in a slow lace and settles as if pleased to have been consulted. All right, I tell the plane, because bargaining with geology is my kink. I won't follow the footprints that made themselves. You don't follow me home. The visor crack sits in the corner of my vision like a sly parenthetical. The patched seam holds, my world stays breathable. Behind me, the tools glitter, a quiet constellation of human verbs, measure, sample, listen, hope. Ahead, the mare waits, an ocean frozen mid-breath, the exhale that never arrived. Somewhere far away, Earth is already writing a caption for this view. Up here, there are no captions, only the shock of being the only warm thing for 1,000 miles. I straighten, test my balance, and turn my shoulder to the crater with the coy boots. The suit's joints whisper approval. My shadow lengthens, a black flag planted just ahead of me, always slightly out of reach. We keep walking, I say, and my voice sounds closer to prayer than I intend. Carefully, kindly, like the guests we should have been on every world we've touched. The mare does not answer. It never had to. It only holds, light, heat, meaning, on its own terms. I angle along the rill, tracing its curve as if reading the first line of a book written in basalt. The quiet shivers once as something deep in the regolith releases a memory of heat, then settles again. Behind me, my footprints do the patient work of making a story visible. Ahead, the sea continues unruffled, a black mirror pretending not to notice I'm looking for myself in it. Chapter 3. The Breathing Void. I drift toward Little West, the small crater that sits like a neat bite taken out of Tranquility Base. Someone's midnight snack from eons ago, now plated in shadow. My patched visor puts a faint hairline through the world. It's a scratch on a record that still somehow plays a song. The plain around me is matte and obedient until the ground stops being ground and becomes edge. A round, black pupil in gray stone, dilating, watching me back. I plant my boots where sane people would stop and lean in. The rim is powdered velvet. Inside, the slope drops into a bowl glazed with darkness so pure it looks like a thought you're not supposed to have. Sunlight knifes the far wall, leaving filigree on fractured rock. Everything else is a well that forgot the rope and bucket. Then the crater breathes. At first, I blame the fans in my suit, or my pulse banging a drum line behind my teeth, but the rhythm isn't mine. A faint puff lifts dust from a ledge halfway down, just a sigh's worth, a soft exhale of regolith that rises and hangs and then re-lands without hurry. A handful of grains bounce twice like they've been reminded to behave. 5 seconds later, another puff. 5 seconds after that, again. Not wind. There is no wind. Not animals. There are no animals, unless you count me and my recurring doubts. The moon is performing chest compressions on its own silence. I lower to a knee and make my voice smaller, a courtesy to the abyss. Don't wake up, I whisper, because I have met enough sleeping gods to know better than to bang pans in their kitchens. A hairline in the regolith near my boot glows slightly, a thin line of colder dust catching sun, an old fracture telling a new story. Thermal gradients, gas release from trapped volatiles, microseismic settling. If you want rational explanations, I brought a lunchbox full. If you want poetry, I have that too. The crater breathes because even emptiness hates to hold its breath forever. I take out my little scoop, call it a security blanket with an edge, and touch the rim lightly. Dust skitters down slope, a gray waterfall in slow motion. One grain refuses, clinging to a sharp chip like a stubborn believer. Everyone gets their faith from somewhere. The crater sighs again, a powdery pulse, and the waterfall stalls, then continues at half speed. From somewhere deep, a tick, the sound of rock correcting its posture. Right, I say, backing up a careful half step. You keep your mysteries, I'll keep my oxygen. The moon is generous with spectacle and stingy with second chances. Mark the crater rim with a boot tap, tiny punctuation, nothing presumptuous, and angle away, following a gentle rise where the plane swells like a held note. The onboard map calls it the Ridge, but I prefer its real name. The place where Earthlight starts to feel like a hand on your shoulder. Climbing on the moon is less climb and more lean. You negotiate with inertia and pretend you're winning. Dust comes with me, magnetic to intent. My shadow gropes ahead, a banner nobody asked me to carry. The sky stays loyal to its black, so black it eats metaphors. And then, bastard that it is, it puts a color in my eyes. Crests the ridge and the earth rises. Too large, too intimate, the forbidden close-up someone posted without asking. She's not a dot, not a coin. She's a lantern flooding the plain in the palest silver blue. Oceans glow like bruises healing. Cloud swirls lace the night in cursive only hurricanes can read. Continents are there and not there simultaneously, flickering like fish under thin ice. I swear I see a coastline shimmer, flexing in the slow dance of atmosphere. My scientist brain raises a hand. Optical refraction at the visor curve. Silas, calm down. My poet brain leans over and whispers, she's alive and keeps her secrets moving so we don't get cocky. She's got that mother's stare, I say, and it comes out warmer than I intended. The one that says, don't forget your chores. Earth knows I left the lights on in the kitchen. Earth knows I didn't call. The ridge itself is a low run of regolith dunes, ripples frozen in basalt flour. Earthlight paints their crests with silver, leaves the troughs ink black. A zebra herd lying down to dream. I reach out and let gloved fingers skim a crest. Dust leaps and settles as if I've just told it a secret. At my back, Little West keeps exhaling, a sleeping dog refusing to be impressed. Ahead, the mare stretches, docile and endless, until the horizon corrals it like a patient parent. Below me, my footprints invent a cartography where none existed, dark on light, each tread a neat rectangle of human insistence. They look reliable. They are not. I've already met their mischievous cousins, the ones that multiplied and stopped at a crater's lip like a punchline I declined to explain. Up here, on the ridge, I watch my new steps unfold with pleasant, untrustworthy clarity. The moon grants visibility and withholds context. It would make an exceptional editor. Earth, meanwhile, refuses to be background. She pulses. Not literally, but light runs through me and pretends it's coming from her. Somewhere under those blues and whites, a child ties shoes, a woman burns dinner, a city checks its reflection in the river and decides it could do worse. Somewhere, someone blows out a candle and someone else lights one. And somewhere, because there is always a somewhere, a crowd counts down from 10 and forgets what it meant at 5. All of that compiled into this single floating reminder to behave. I crouch on the ridge and let the legs of the suit take the load. The micro scratches on my visor catch Earth's glow, throwing faint halos around the little dings I've earned. My own face ghosts back at me for a second, wide-eyed, helmeted, more pilgrim than tourist now. I give myself a nod so small only my neck knows it happened. A faint tremor comes up through my boots. Nothing dramatic, just the moon clearing its throat. It travels along the ridge, a bass note you feel more than hear, and fades into the mare's complacency. I check my readouts because ritual is a kind of religion out here. Pressure holding, heart rate misbehaving but teachable, oxygen at levels that do not inspire poetry. The radio breathes in my ear, an open door to nothing. Then, as if remembering its own script, it stutters a loop of static that almost forms words, and then wisely does not. I let it be. There are echoes up here I have no business convening. What's the plan, Silas? I ask myself, because rhetorical questions have better acoustics on the moon. The plan is this. Keep walking until awe vaporizes my cynicism, then stop just short of worship. Keep the ridge between me and foolishness. Keep Earth to my left like a compass that also judges your internet history. Keep my patched visor turned slightly away from rocks that look like they collect cracks as a hobby. I rise and take 2 long lunar steps, slow arcs, soft landings. The ridge inclines, tips me toward a broad view that would embarrass a cathedral. I glance back once more at Little West, the breathing pupil, the patient metronome of dust. It and the ridge and the mare are all rehearsing the same play. Stillness that knows it is not still at all, just grand enough to make time perform in longer notes. Don't wake up, I told the crater. To the earth, I say the opposite. A whisper my mic won't bother with. Stay awake. Someone down there is listening to a voice like mine and deciding whether to keep walking. Someone is putting down a flag or a grudge or a grief. Someone is inventing the next recipe for wonder. The ridge levels. Earth lifts another improbable finger's breadth. I let the blue pour over my shoulder and into the plain, and feel, for the first time all night, not like an intruder, but like a temporary punctuation mark in a sentence the universe is still writing. If I'm lucky, I'm a comma. If I'm honest, I'm a semicolon, confident about the pause, uncertain about the next clause. Either way, I keep moving, following the silver where it spills down into the mare, careful not to mistake illumination for invitation. Up here, beauty wears a thin veil of madness. Down there, madness often calls itself beautiful. I have walked both and know the difference is mostly slope and gravity. The crater breathes behind me. The earth watches ahead. Between them, I make a path that will last for centuries, then vanish in a whisper of micrometeor weather. That's fine. Not all stories are supposed to stick. Some are meant to be told once, to one horizon, and then let go. I keep going. Chapter 4. The Watchers and the Wounds. Sharp shadows carve the plain into a geometry textbook with trust issues. Every boulder ends in a razor. Every ridge throws a blade of night. The stars above don't twinkle. They interrogate. I try not to incriminate myself. I follow a low swale until the ground lifts into a tidy plateau where two relics of human curiosity squat in patient exile. The abandoned seismograph, half wrapped in wrinkled foil like a leftover Triumph, and the square laser reflector, a meticulous chessboard of corner cubes aimed at eternity. They sit exactly where they were told to sit, like obedient dogs still waiting for an astronaut who promised to be right back. No one explained retirement to them, and frankly, I respect that. The seismograph has that obsolete future look, thin wires, delicate spines, a dish meant to listen for moonquakes, meteor kisses, the thermal creak of rock that expands and contracts with brutal honesty. Up close, its surfaces are pitted by micrometeor pecks, the kind of acne only a vacuum could cause. The reflector, by contrast, is all clean and tint, little prisms ready to throw a laser back home, so Earth can count the meters in our long-distance relationship. It is the perfect audience, silent, exact, and incapable of applause. I draw a level with the reflector and catch a flick at the edge of my visor, a metallic shimmer that doesn't behave like accident. One blink, pause, another blink, the tempo is uncanny. 2 beats, rest, 2 beats, rest. I count it without meaning to. It counts me back. The flashes sink to the drum in my chest until I'm fairly certain my heart has learned Morse code. I lift my gloved hand and give the void a small, dignified wave. The glint answers. A brighter, longer wink, then slips out of existence, like a shy star ducking behind an alibi. Always nice to know someone's enjoying the show, I say to the reflector, which, true to character, offers me the world's most perfectly indifferent stare. If it had eyebrows, they'd be immaculate. There's a superstition up here that you develop in under an hour. If you're very quiet, the moon will forget you're trespassing. I take a breath that's all machinery and self-control and press on toward the crater field beyond, a pocked acreage of little bowls that make the ground look like a polka-dot funeral. Each crater is a diary entry written by a rock that traveled a suicidal number of miles to carve one clean syllable into a surface that remembers everything. Nothing rustles, nothing sighs, and then, as if the sky couldn't stand its own composure, micrometeors begin to scratch their signatures across the dark. Knife-thin, silent streaks of light, each a moment of kinetic apology. They're so quiet it hurts. One slashes directly overhead like a thin grin, and because I'm a professional, I do not stop to compose my last words. Another draws a silver line from zenith toward the horizon and erases itself at the edge of my doubt. The third one doesn't erase. It arrives. No sound. Just a sudden surgical brightness in my periphery, and then a puff of regolith 20 meters right, an exhale of dust in slow motion. A pale halo blooms outward, a curtain shaken by an invisible hand. Grains ring faintly against my suit, ping, ping, as if a very tiny audience has decided I deserve at least some feedback. Rain, I mutter, checking my oxygen like a man pretending he doesn't just feel his spine shiver, but the kind that doesn't forgive umbrellas. The newborn crater is perfect, bruised glass at the center, powdered rays flung like compass points, a circumference crisp as a coin. I creep closer with the tiptoeing care of someone who understands that momentum is the real boss up here. The moon is generous with scenery and vindictive about physics. At the rim, I lean enough to see my reflection in the melt, warped, blue-tinged, helmeted ghost peering into a wound that will outlive continents. It's beautiful in that indecent way disaster sometimes is. I want to apologize to it for intruding. Instead, I breathe and fog my faceplate, which is apology enough in these parts. A fourth streak scribbles the sky, farther out, harmless. Maybe the universe is just showing off. Maybe it's sharpening knives where I can see them to save everyone the trouble of pretending this is a picnic. The crater field hums its silent tune. Impact, settle, forget. I shift my boots and feel the regolith compact with a powdery sigh through my soles. The act of walking becomes an agreement with gravity. I will move like I mean it, and gravity will pretend I'm graceful. I glance back at the seismograph. It's angled as if listening to me, recording my footfalls as the faintest whispers. Human again, human again. I hope it's still keeping score. I hope someone's still reading. A faint blink flickers from the plateau, my elusive watcher returning for a curtain call. I raise both hands, palms out, like a mall Santa greeting a skeptical toddler, and wait. The glint stutters once, then smears into nothing. Fine. We're all allowed our mysteries. It's not like I brought confetti. Another micro-strike dusts the far side of the field. The ejected plume catches earthlight and glows a spectral white, so soft it makes my throat tighten. I stand between two truths. The instrument's unblinking patience behind me, the crater fields, fresh scars before me. Between listening and wounding is where the human story happens. We set down machines to hear the moon sigh. The moon answers by reminding us it is constantly being punched in the face by the cosmos. Message received. I skirt the new crater with a pilgrim's caution. The dust at my boots lifts, hovers, settles. A slow dance choreographed by nothing but charge and time. My shadow jumps channels between hard black and nothing, depending on whether the terrain is in the mood for drama. Above, the stars triple down on their cold evaluation. If starlight ever smiled, it doesn't tonight. I pause, glance back at the retroreflector, that square altar collecting the unasked-for devotions of laser pulses from home. Some technician at a telescope will ping it next week, next year, next generation, and enter a number. The number will change by millimeters because the Earth and Moon are married in a slow, complicated dance, drifting. People will celebrate decimals like they're poetry. Maybe that's appropriate. Up here, even numbers feel brave. A glitter of dust across my visor pulls my attention inward. The grain stubbornly clings in the exact place my eye wants to look. Of course it does. I resist the ancient human urge to wipe my face. Not today, I tell the speck. We both need this illusion of control. The field of wounds fades into a calmer plane, but the feeling doesn't. The sense of being noted, not welcomed, not warned, not exactly judged, just entered into a ledger. I've felt it in cathedrals and ruined libraries before empty thrones. The moon's version is cleaner, stripped of incense and pride. A page, a mark, that is all. I take one long look at the congregation behind me. The stoic seismograph that never stopped leaning in. The reflector square that says, "Return to sender," across light years. The brand new crater cooling like a fresh thought. There's a tenderness in my chest I didn't pack for. I raise my hand, yes, again, and give the plateau a goodbye it won't need. Then I turn away, boots printing careful ovals in a ground that makes vows to forget. The meteors go back to scribbling someone else's chapter. The glint chooses silence. The instruments keep their vigil, proud and unthanked. Isolation doesn't mean absence here. It means presence without witnesses, or rather, witnesses who refuse to clap. I walk on, watched by perfect mirrors and stone clocks, into a horizon that has no intention of getting closer just because I want it to. Chapter 5. The Edge of Shadow. The plain ahead of me is a ruler laid across infinity, one side blazing like a god's desk lamp, the other swallowed by velvet. The terminator isn't a line so much as a verdict. I step toward it the way you'd approach a sleeping animal with an excellent memory. One boot in sunlight, one in endless night. The suit crunches faintly where it meets lit dust, photons making every grain perform its tiny solo. My other boot settles into shadow, and the temperature drop is a knife that never learned mercy. The air inside my helmet doesn't change, of course. My brain does, sprinting to the cliff edge of instinct and staring down. The stars sharpen until they feel like opinions. Somewhere behind me, the footprints of men with perfect radio discipline and better legs curve toward safety. I have never envied a footprint more. Half-baked, I tell myself, flexing my shadowed toes, literally. Light carves me to the waist. Darkness claims the rest in one clean bite. In the middle, a seam runs up my body where the suit's thermal systems negotiate with physics like a union steward who's read the manual twice. The sun-scorched half of my visor blooms with hairline scratches, ancient battles with dust, and the night half becomes a window into forever. Two realities, one helmet. If you're trying this at home, don't. In the noonday glare, the ground is a chalkboard ringed by the sun's cruel cursive. In darkness, the regolith lifts toward me, grain edges bright in earthlight, the whole plain glowing like it hoards secrets under the top layer. I take a step. Shadow follows. That's normal. I take another. Two shadows slide beside me. I freeze so hard the suit's joints complain. In the lit half of the world, my silhouette stands tall and polite, every antenna accounted for. In the dark half, a smear on velvet, a second shape lags a heartbeat, arriving late to the party, then locking in. When I pivot left, the obedient shadow salutes. The other lingers like it had to check its calendar first. Maybe the flag learned to walk, I say, and the sound of my own voice is a hand on my shoulder. Jokes, the last flashlight. I tested again. Head tilt, arm lift. The late shadow repeats me with the hesitation of a liar. The suit's systems offer no opinions, which is rude. My rational mind drafts memos, earthlight angles, terrain undulations, the kind of optical nonsense the moon enjoys inflicting on guests. My irrational mind opens a window and lets in the possibility that the landscape has been rehearsing me for so long it started anticipating my lines. I take one slow step toward the night. The hesitant shadow thickens, dark within dark, then melts into the overall black as if embarrassed to be seen. I step back into harsher light. 2 shadows again, real and administrative, then just one. The delay returns, a second's worth of lag that feels like a polite threat. Copy that, I murmur. 1 for me, 1 for whoever pays the rent here. The twilight plane itself humbles me. It is an edge made visible, a thought experiment paved in powder. You don't walk across it so much as negotiate terms. Time's posture here is different. Stretched by light, compressed by dark, ground to a shine by nothing at all. I feel as if my heart has become a metronome with 2 tempos. The sunny side asking for allegro, the dark side insisting on adagio. If I make it home, some cardiologist is getting a postcard. Past the seam, the ground drops a few gentle meters into a dagger-toothed run of far ridges. Beyond those, a suggestion only. The dark side's breath, cold and patient, a whole hemisphere sitting in permanent conspiracy. The notion that something could be watching from there is absurd. The sensation that something is not. A burning streak cuts across my zenith, quick and immaculate. One of those micrometeor signatures that writes its name and vanishes before you finish the gasp. Except this one doesn't. The streak halts, mid-air. A line scribed on a window someone forgot to finish washing. It hangs, flickering, as though considering its options, then blinks out without the courtesy of an explanation. Either alien tech, I say evenly, keeping my oxygen rate in the land of reasonable, or the universe flexing for attention. I wait for the delayed thunder that doesn't exist on the moon. There's only the click-tick of suit servos, the small hisses that mean I still get to be alive. I angle my chin for a better look at nothing and get exactly that, but with menace. Okay. File under stuff I will absolutely not mention to Mission Control in the debrief. The ridge ahead is darker than night, black that consumes black. I skirt it on the lit side where light invents detail. Beads of glass from old impacts, bright as if some giant spilled a necklace and never came back. The ground in the shadow gives me shapes only in negative space. Holes where confidence goes to sprain an ankle. I plant each foot like a thesis, slide the other up behind it, repeat. When in doubt, dance with gravity like it's your first partner after a long break. Slow, watch the elbows. When the late shadow returns at my heel, it isn't alone. Across the ridge, the dark lays a long body hewn out of void, and for one feral moment it seems to stand up, shoulders, head, a suggestion of an arm, raised in greeting or threat. I blink, and it collapses back into geometry. The moon delights in this kind of theater, no sound cues, all lighting design. I offer it a slow clap inside my head because I need the minutes to keep feeling like mine. A low rumble that isn't real moves through my bones. Memory, or the idea of memory. The great shadow sees the geologist named Mayer as a joke that went too far. The ground is old black glass and powdered bone, dust from 1,000 detonations. Humanity's prints sit on top like fresh graffiti on a cathedral. I add my lines, careful cursive, and wonder who reads. I step outward again, deeper into the seam's knife edge, until my body is an equation the sun and silence are solving from opposite sides. In the visor's dark half, Earth hangs swollen, blue like bruised porcelain, watching with the steady, unblinking patience of someone who funded the trip and expects receipts. In the bright half, the sun glares the way only a star at noon can. I am auditioning for both and winning neither. The stopped streak has not returned. The watcher's glint from earlier stays retired. The two-shadow game keeps its rules. Delay, mirror, merge. I begin to think of the moon as a predator with ethics. It shows you its teeth slowly and lets you leave if you understand the conversation. I'm understanding. My glove drifts to the patch I made earlier, to the fine dust that stitched my visor's wound. The seam holds, fanged glitter snow still pasted along it like a scar with pride. Halfway up the far ridge, the gradient steepens to bad idea. I pause, scan the slope, and choose a traverse that will let me pretend I'm accumulating wisdom instead of altitude. A handful of pebbles, sharp, bright, slide from under my boot and skitter toward the dark. They go silent at the line as if sound refuses visas there. I watch them disappear, small comets dying into nothing, and feel the pull in my gut that says, "Do not follow." The late shadow nods. We agree on something at last. My comms crackle, one dry pop, then the faintest ghost of a carrier wave. It says nothing. It says I could. I tilt my head as if to listen better and catch my own breath ricocheting inside the helmet. For a second, it sounds like someone else, quieter, patient, waiting me out. I grin despite myself. "You can have the last word," I tell it. "I'm a guest." At the ridge's top, the world rearranges itself like a deck being cut. Behind me, the twilight plain, some visible, the kind of oversimplified diagram you draw in a classroom, except it will kill you if you forget the math. Ahead, a land of hollows upon hollows, light draped in rags over their mouths, darkness pooling in each, bottomless because up here nothing scatters. The dark side's breath runs cold over my visor. Imagination, yes, but imagination has teeth. I stand and let the bite remind me I'm still meat in a place that doesn't care for the concept. A tiny flash, low and left, like someone lighting a match in an abandoned theater. It holds a beat, then smears, then is gone. Another above, fainter, like remorse. The moon scripts its own meteor weather in elegant cursive while I read my lines. Move steady, trust mass, don't feed the metaphors. The delayed shadow leans into mine once more, and for the first time I lean back. Let our edges overlap, except that some part of me is always arriving after I've moved on. On Earth, we call that memory. Up here, it's just geometry with feelings. I begin my descent, boots finding their old religion, angle, plant, ease. The seam waits, the bright half already squinting at me, the dark half pretending it never cared. Above, an unfallen star decides not to, again. If this is a performance, it's the kind that sells no tickets and runs for eons. I'm content to be the understudy who made curtain. "All right," I say, voice low, friendly, to the plain and the ridge and whatever blinked. Edge acknowledged. The moon does not answer, which is exactly the answer I needed. I take one step, then another, and the shadows, mine and the late one, fall into time together, a duet finally choosing the same tempo. The seam narrows behind me and the light resumes its rude, honest work. Chapter 6. the echo beneath the dust. The plain ahead looks untouched, a table set for no one. Then a ridge breaks into a slump, and there it is, a crashed probe, a relic with ribs half swallowed by the powder. The hull is the color of resignation, its once proud foil peeled back like a candy wrapper someone tried to save. On the side, beneath filigrees of micrometeor freckles, a red emblem still goes through. Faint, stubborn, a memory painted in rust. I've seen a lot of human bravado wearing good lighting. This isn't that. This is a machine that aimed at forever and belly-flopped into silence. The lander's antenna is kinked in an apologetic bow. A spidery leg juts at the wrong angle, as if still reaching for a surface it never quite understood. A low drift of regolith has piled up against the instrument panel, as polite as a blanket pulled over sleeping shoulders. If failure could look dignified, it would look like this. I approach with the deference we reserve for altars and crash sites. Close in, the details sharpen. Hairline cracks radiate from a crushed bracket, tiny pocks where space grit knocked at the door, a strip of wiring that unspools into the dust like a black vein. The emblem catches a slant of earth light and flares briefly, a pulse of color so human it hurts. S2.E13, I whisper, because sometimes good manners require the right syllables. You made it to the party. The probe does not respond, which is polite of it. I kneel, slow, careful, the way you kneel at both graves and proposals. My gloves press into the regolith with a hush, and the dust sighs around my forearms as if rethinking its boundaries. The suit servos hum, the little. Fans inside gossip about oxygen, and underneath all that, something else. A hum not made by me. Faint, low, as if the ground keeps a beehive of secrets and one just woke up. I hold still until stillness turns into a skill. The sound is barely there, more a feeling than a note, like the echo of the seismograph I left behind, like remembered thunder. Is it thermal stress? The tick of cold metal negotiating with colder night? The moon muttering to itself? I tilt my helmet closer to the probe's open panel and the hum sharpens, then drifts, then resolves into a single, soft pulse that taps the bones of my jaw. Once decisive. A heartbeat given back. Don't worry, I say, and the calm carries my voice nowhere helpful. I'm just visiting. The surface under my knees holds for a breath, then answers with another small thump, as if stamping a passport. Fine, I'm logged. I brush dust from a plate of Cyrillic, letters blooming out of gray like names on a fogged mirror. Designation is more serial number than sonnet, but it implies a whole human chain. Machinists, engineers, program managers who smoked through their lunch breaks and swore at budgets. I imagine the launch room somewhere cold on Earth, eyes pinned to a dot moving across a green glass sky while coffee cooled into regret. We always send our best intentions ahead of us, I murmur, and they send back telemetry when they can. A narrow tear in the panel shows a coil of wire hardened into a small sculpture by vacuum. I want to fix something, tighten a screw, fold a hinge, speak a password. You can't patch history, though. You can only witness it well. The hum fades to a suggestion, like an old song hummed by walls. I nod to the emblem once more and rise, dust lifting in a reluctant halo around my thighs. Beyond the wreck, the land spills toward a low horizon that never grew up tall enough to be intimidating. This is where the moon becomes truly itself. No clutter, no memorabilia, just the curve of a world that learned the discipline of silence. I walk toward it, boots planting oval declarations in a place that has no courts to read them. The sky is a black coin bitten by stars, but the horizon carries a gleam like a promise you keep meaning to keep. At first, it's a pale smear, the ghost of a thought. Then the edge brightens, a slow-breathing aurora scaled down to the size of an eyelash. The ground under my feet remembers to be silver. The shadows stretch like cats after a nap. And then she lifts, Earthrise. Not the theatrical version, the quiet one. Blue swaddled in white, continents smudged with night. She climbs with no ropes, no drum roll, as if she's only stepping up to check on a sleeping child. I can trace storm ladders looping across oceans, the soft bruise of a sea at dusk, a necklace of city fire faint along a coastline that means home to someone who will never meet me. Mother's back, I say because irreverence helps me. Swallow reverence. Try not to look disappointed, ma'am. The moon and I have been behaving. She doesn't answer, the good authority that she is. She watches. I've seen lookouts and mastheads, saints and emperors. None stare like this, bold and tender, consequence and comfort in the same gaze. The plane in front of me exhales a powdery ghost, charred dust lifting, swirling, settling. The motion is so slow it feels ceremonial, like incense in a temple that traded priests for physics. My visor reflects earth in thumbnail, a small, perfect theft. I hold still until the breath of dust makes a veil across my boots, until my shadow acquires a second shadow I don't claim. All our footprints out here will last until the sun forgets where we put them. We came. We planted a flag that won't flutter unless you kick it. We left machines to count the inches of our longing. Then we went home and told the story until it became furniture. Something in the living room you don't see anymore unless a guest points at it. We left footprints, I whisper, tasting the tin and carbon in my breath, and forgot how to follow them home. There's a temptation here at the edge of the view that made a century sit down and cry to make promises. We'll return. We'll behave. We'll build careful and leave kinder. Maybe we will. Maybe promises are what humans are for, and the universe is kind enough to judge us by our attempts. Behind me, the lost messenger sleeps without complaint. Ahead, Earth steadies herself above the silver like a coin pressed against a child's palm. Keep this. Spend it wisely. The hum I felt by the probe seems to resonate now in the ground under everything. The moon's slow geological heartbeat, or my imagination refusing to clock out. Either way, it dignifies the silence. I sit because the suit and the view decide I should. The horizon is a line ruled by no ruler, the curve of a word about to be spoken. I let it speak in my bones instead of my ears. The stars hold their poses. The dust calms. My own pulse learns the trick of smallness. Somewhere under that blue, someone looks up from a porch or a window or a prison yard and points a finger at the sky, tracing this arc without knowing I'm on the other end of it, drawing the same line. It's a good trick, communion without consent. The cosmos specializes. I stand again, not because anything insists, but because leaving is part of arriving. One last look at Earth's eye, one last glance at the sleeping instrument, the careful wreck. The horizon keeps its secrets. I keep mine, which are mostly gratitude in the names of places that still believe in me. All right, I say, to the view, to the void, to the echo under the dust. I'll go before I start making vows I can't afford. The moon offers no counter-argument. She rarely does. I turn, and my footprints reverse their thesis. Oval stepping back through a scripture only boots can read. Breathe with me. Slow in, slow out. Let the quiet take your weight for a moment and return it improved. The show's over. which only means the night is deeper. Sleep gently, sleepy heads. The circle remembers you, even when time forgets.